We're looking at deductive reasoning, and then we're going to look at angles. We're going to start off by looking at syllogism. It's a type of deductive reasoning. Syllogism is made up of a major premise, a minor premise, and a conclusion. The major premise for this one, all squares are rectangles. The minor premise, quadrilateral ABCD is a square. Any ideas what we could conclude? What? The quadrilateral ABCD is also a rectangle. Does that make sense? They share some of the same properties. All squares are rectangles. If it is a square, then it also has to be a rectangle. Correct. Not all rectangles are squares, but all squares are rectangles. Any questions on this one? We're also going to look at valid, invalid conclusions. All poets are poor, and Roger is poor. They concluded Roger is a poet. But why is that invalid? Yeah. All poets are poor, but just because he's poor, does he have to be a poet? No. If it said all poets are poor, what would be a minor premise that we could use instead? All poets are poor. Roger is a poet. If we said he's a poet, then can we draw a valid conclusion? Then Roger is poor. Does that make sense? But if we say Roger's poor, that doesn't necessarily mean that he has to be a poet. You see the difference there? Okay. All chickens have 3 legs. Is that true? But that's what they give us for our major premise. So even though chickens do not have 3 legs, we're using it as a true statement. Does that make sense? Kenny is a chicken. So Kenny has 3 legs. Is that a valid conclusion? All chickens have 3 legs. So Kenny is a chicken, therefore Kenny has 3 legs. That would be a valid conclusion. It's not a true statement, but it is valid. Does that make sense? That's the difference between valid and true. The lesson on this in pre-calculus, they use henny penny instead of just henny. That's why I started to say henny penny, and then I remembered it's just henny in this one. Y'all understand? It's just a type of reasoning. Okay. If it rains, I will go to town. It did not rain, and so the conclusion is I did not go to town. Why is it invalid? It only said if it rains, I'll go to town. It didn't say anything about if it doesn't rain, I'm not going to go to town. Does that make sense? I could still go to town if it doesn't rain. Does that make sense? If it rains, I'm certainly going to town. But if it doesn't rain, I could still go to town. I may not, but I could. It doesn't tell me anything about if it doesn't rain. Does that make sense? Any questions on any of these three? Do y'all see how they work? The homework questions on these, it's going to say all dogs have 3 legs. Henry is a dog. Therefore, Henry has 3 legs. And then you're supposed to say, is it valid or not, and why or why not? Does that make sense? When it says explain or why, complete sentences. Okay? Not fragments. You need to write in complete sentences. So all dogs have 3 legs. Henry is a dog. Therefore, Henry has 3 legs. All dogs have 3 legs. Yeah, it's valid because it said that all dogs have 3 legs, and Henry is a dog, so he has to have 3 legs as well. Yeah. If it says valid, then you just repeat it. If it says invalid, let me look. All scholars are poor. Rita is poor, so Rita is a scholar. That's invalid, and why? Yeah. Like I said, they're not, it's just miscellaneous information. Does that make sense? Any questions on these? Oh, that was practice A and B. Sorry. No, they're not. They'll get to them. All right. So I've mentioned these before. Alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles. We haven't actually had a lesson on them. You've been using them this entire time, but they haven't actually told you what they are. No, we need to know the names of them. Angles 1 are congruent. They're on alternate sides of the transversal. Do you see that? One's on the left and one's on the right. And they're inside of the 2 parallel lines. They're interior. That's where they get their name, alternate interior angles. What do we know about these 2 angles? They're the same. What do we know about these 2? Alternate interior angles are congruent. Does that make sense? You do need to learn that name. You need to know that those are alternate interiors. Any questions on alternate interior angles? Okay, alternate exterior angles. They are on alternate sides, and they are outside of the 2 parallel lines. They're on the exterior. What do we know about alternate exterior angles? They're also the same. You do need to learn the name for them. Any questions on these 2 right now? Okay. We also have corresponding angles. Do what? Yeah, I went over them, but they haven't been in an actual lesson. It drives me crazy that they wait until lesson 30 to do this. I don't know why they wait so long. Yeah, you've been using them. These 2 angles are on the same side of the transversal, angle 1. They're both on the left side, and they're in the same spot on the parallel line. Like we just took this angle and slid it down. Like they correspond to each other. Does that make sense? Can't stop coughing. Same thing with angle 2, angle 3, and angle 4. What do we know about these 2 angles? What? Yeah. They're corresponding, they're congruent, they're the same. What about these? They're the same. These, they're the same. And angles 4, they're the same. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is a theorem. You don't have to know it word for word. You just need to understand the concept of it. Yes. Whenever you have parallel lines that are cut by transversal, you've got parallel lines that have a transversal going through them. The pairs of alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles, and the corresponding angles are congruent. Does that make sense? Alternate interior, alternate exterior, the two on the top. So all it's saying is all three sets of these angles, all types of them, these three are all congruent. Any questions on these three? You've been using this information in problems already, but now they've given you the names, so you need to learn the names and what they mean. All right, we're also looking at the triangle sum theorem. You knew that a triangle has 180 degrees, right? All this is a theorem telling you, in case you didn't know, a triangle has 180 degrees when you add up all the angles. No matter what triangle you're looking at, the three angles always add up to 180 degrees. You've been using that for a while now, right? Not just this year. But in case you were unaware, that is the case. You'll feel like that a lot next year in geometry. Like, we'll go over what a circle is, in case you didn't know what a circle was. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Huh? No. So how would you find out what x is? So x plus, so what would x have to be? Does that make sense? You've known that, right? Any questions on this lesson?